Done. Okay. Again, welcome back, everyone, to our course, the research seminar. We're in the midst of the review of our syllabus. I'd like to spend a few minutes to emphasize the main themes of our course and then actually move into the substance of the first lecture. So we will meet on a regular basis every Tuesday and Thursday at this time. Of course, most of you know me by now, Michael Lewis. I'm an associate professor in our Department of Computer Science. I'm the coordinator of our data science program and the director of our professional studies initiatives. You could find me when the campus is open in Block 7 on the 3rd floor in the new wing, relatively new wing, 7E.326. I would be happy to receive you there, other than the fact that we're not actually meeting on campus. And even I am obliged to ask for permission to enter campus during these pandemic times. So I will ask you to join these sessions. I will record them routinely and post the links on our Moodle site, but I will ask you on a regular basis to join us live. The recordings are primarily there for people who were ill or could not make the session, something like today where the power goes out and maybe people cannot participate. It's more of a fallback. The other thing is the nature of these sessions will be much more like a seminar, more of a dialogue, a conversation. You'll do some things, we'll talk about those things, and we'll move it forward. I will try to use your time effectively, and I won't just fill it for the sake of having a 75-minute class. If I run out of things to talk about, we will end early. Okay, now, so course materials in Moodle. I do want to emphasize something in particular. We will look at this in just a few moments. I'll share the slides, but the program structure of our master's program, it's a 2-year program. And you know that we have a path for your discipline courses, your domain, computer science, robotics, data science, that you take courses in the first year, kind of core or foundational courses, and then you begin to take electives and courses that will complement your thesis topic. So that's substantial. In fact, you end up taking more of those subject matter courses than our counterparts who take a program, a similar program at Stanford or New York University, for example. So we have a 2-year program, more credits than most. Many of the UK programs are in fact 1 year. So we build some extra components, extra threads into our program. We build one component, which we used to call the practicum component. It was a teaching and a learning course, a teaching practicum, and a laboratory practicum. Some of our master's programs still retain this path, this thread. Others, it's voluntary. They can take it as an elective. But the teaching practicum course in particular, the one in which many of you are enrolled, we met yesterday, this is kind of a combination now, a hybrid of the pedagogical elements of the teaching and learning course with the hands-on elements of the teaching practicum. We combine them so that we could offer even more electives, subject matter electives, in your respective programs. The third, so we have the domain, right? The topical area. We have the practicum component, but perhaps most significantly is our thesis track. We have the research methods course, followed by the research seminar. This is course number 2 in that sequence. It will be followed next fall by a course that was previously called the thesis proposal. It should be called thesis research. And then the final term, all thesis. So this is effectively the capstone of the graduate program. So we are in course number 2 of that thread of your graduate program. And again, I'll share some of these slides with you just to make the point more coherently. But this is important because as the research seminar, we will try to recognize and try to become more knowledgeable about recent trends in our respective disciplines, to try to identify a solid topic area, because we have the benefit and the curse of choice. And we know from what we might call decision science that the more choices you have, the less likely you are to make a choice. It might be why we have things like arranged marriages, because if it were left up to the people involved, it might take them forever to make these choices. But if it's made for you, you come to accept it, you move on. Occasionally, we're paralyzed by choice. This often happens because in our discipline in particular, uh, computing permeates everything. We can find a way to explore our areas of interest in so many different fields. And this is true of all of the disciplines in this course, whether it's computer science, robotics, or data science. We are talking about a tremendous range of applicability. So we need to figure out how to narrow this down somewhat to become a master in a particular field. And we become a master through the recognition of the subject area, the identification of authoritative sources. We become more discriminating in a positive sense, more critical in terms of selecting relevant and authoritative sources. We become aware of what those contributions are, whether they're conference submissions or journal papers or projects, and we learn to recognize what's out there at one level, and then we get the breadth. And then we understand, we select, we cluster, we filter a selected number of these, perhaps 5 or 10% of them, to read more thoroughly, to immerse ourselves in that area of the field, so that through this immersion over time, we establish this expertise, this mastery. You might know that the term master comes from the German concept. It was effectively part of an apprenticeship, and they believed it took 6 or 7 years to become a master. Well, many of you took a 4-year bachelor program, and now you're taking a 2-year master's program. And by virtue of having this thesis track, you will become one of the most knowledgeable people in our university in your subject area. This is the expected outcome. You might become so knowledgeable that the work you do for your investigation of the topic and your preparation of the thesis, you might become so strong that your work can be subjected to peer review in the conference and journal communities, and that you could become published. It's our hope that all thesis work will undergo this experience, and perhaps half of these works will be successful in gaining publication. I don't know if we're meeting this target, but it is the expectation that we'd like your work to be that strong. If you follow the guidelines, which you learned hopefully in research methods, and then we will elaborate here in the research seminar, this could be true. Now we will expedite certain elements of this. We will fast track your identification of a topic, and we will try to identify an appropriate domain advisor. So in addition to myself serving as the course instructor, we will find you a domain expert to serve as your advisor for your thesis. And we will be working together to help you identify those sources, to understand which ones are the most important, to begin to build a bibliography of these sources, to conduct a small initial literature review summarizing these papers. You've been doing this since you were in secondary school. Many of you did it in your foundation program or your bachelor program. You'll do it in your technical writing classes. But we will do it together using the correct tools in the correct format, an IEEE publication format, using LaTeX in Overleaf. And we will build from these sources a very nice bibliography. You will retain notes. It will actually become a form of an annotated bibliography. And you will keep track of good diagrams, good charts, good data, good quotations, good pictures, and you will gradually build for yourself a nice repository of this information from which you will slowly, iteratively build your thesis document. We will begin this semester. There are in the past some students who did not begin this process until very late, in some cases late in the third semester or early in the fourth. And of course, those students rarely finish on time. If you work with us and you go through this process with the topic, the sources, the bibliography, if you start to create these summaries and then you assimilate them into a bona fide survey paper, meaning, of course, not just something like SurveyMonkey, but a survey of a discipline, of a field. We'll talk more about it for those of you who haven't read them before. It's quite important. We will assimilate this information so that you can speak reasonably authoritatively. You'll understand what was the background of that field, what are some of the recent advances, who are the most active groups and authors, what are some of the most recent contributions and most promising trends, what data are they using, what methodology are they using. We'll identify works that you might replicate in order to become more masterly in this domain, and then you will make adaptations. You will try the same methodology on new data sets. You might try them on combinations of data sets. You might apply some other techniques and other splits of the data. You might do modifications of the methodology on the old data and the new data. There are lots of variations, combinations, permutations of this. And as you do it, you'll keep a little notebook of your work and your thoughts, and all of this will ultimately be reflected in your thesis. I will share with you some of the recent examples of the survey papers and the thesis document. The survey paper is the precursor to the thesis document, and I'll talk much more about this. So this semester, topic, advisor, authoritative sources, immersion in the literature, writing summaries of some of that literature, and writing a survey paper. But many of these components of the survey paper will migrate directly into your thesis document. In fact, this is a slight secret. Apparently, I'm telling lots of secrets lately. We will compose the survey paper in the format of the thesis document so that the migration happens. In fact, we start writing your thesis this semester. Now, we'll show you how to do all these things. And if you stay with your topic at the end of the semester, you will have done quite a bit of work. And that work can continue over the summer, either independently or working with your advisor. You could work as a research assistant or on a project. You could use the summer to study a new language or a new environment or build a new data set or build a model. It could be like that. And you could continue in the fall on your thesis research. There's no penalty to finishing the thesis early, but there are penalties for finishing late. So my goal is to get you guys started this semester, to use your time well. Everything that we do should contribute towards this objective so that you're not replicating, right? But in some cases, if you change your topic, you at least know how to do it, how to get started, and you can do it all again in much shorter amounts of time. And the key is you will have time. You will have time to achieve this. So this is our goal in this course. And when I spoke earlier, I said, we are not passive learners here. You guys are taking charge of your graduate education. The topic, the advisor, you'll be working more closely, you'll be consulting, you'll be thinking, you'll be asking questions, you'll be getting feedback. It's not just attending the class and getting the credit and taking a quiz. And I want to emphasize this. I will begin by talking a lot because that's partly my job. And then we'll slowly transition to where you guys will be talking a lot. And later, you will tell us. Let's say that you have selected some new, some aspect of, I don't know, image recognition. And maybe there's a couple of data sets that are relevant and a couple of methodologies that are promising and some new approaches that take a hybrid approach and come up with pretty good probabilistic results. You will investigate these things on our behalf, and then you will describe them to us. And in 10 or 15 minutes, all of us, reasonably bright, reasonably aware, reasonably interested, will become well informed about that field because you've done the work and you're going to share those results with us. So these become early stages in the presentation of your thesis subject. in the defense of your thesis proposal, and then later, the actual defense of your thesis. So the earlier you begin to speak about it and get feedback, the more comfortable you will become and the stronger your defense. So we will practice. In the beginning, I talk a lot. I will ask some other faculty members to join us over time so that they can describe to you what they're doing in their labs, their current research, their recent publications, and then they'll describe to you the profile of the kinds of students they would like to work with. That is, students for whom they would be willing to serve as the advisor. Now, we can't do that for all the faculty, but we can certainly do it for a selected subset, in particular those who are actively looking for graduate students, regardless of your discipline. So we will have these presentations spread out over the semester, and you may find you'd like to adjust your topic based on that, either in a small way or a large way. That's okay. We would like to use this course to make you more familiar with the work of our departments collectively, not just computer science, robotics, data science, but there are others. We can do, on occasion, interdisciplinary projects. There's a great deal of work being done with computation. You might realize this in many other disciplines. Some of our best computational scientists happen to be in the Department of Physics. Some of the best people doing modeling and simulation happen to be in chemistry or physics. Some of our best data scientists happen to be in biology. You understand what I'm saying? Our work permeates many other fields. So we can choose the topic, we can choose your primary advisor, and we can choose a co-advisor or a secondary advisor or committee members. And while these will initially come from within our university and our departments, we will also choose external, a third member of your thesis committee who might come from another department or even another university inside or outside the country, or even maybe from industry, someone who is a domain expert. Guys, I'm very excited about this, if it's not clear. I think this is important. We go from last semester taking maybe semi-boring classes that are maybe a rehash of work you did in your bachelor degree so that you knew 60, 70, 80% of it already, and you might not have been that enthralled. But this semester, you will choose things that are interesting for you, and much of the work will be new. Some of it historical, some of it foundational, but much of it recent. So recent that it's not in the textbooks. It won't be in the textbooks. For us, textbooks are out of date by the time they are printed. This is how it works. For most of us, we work with primary sources. And for many of the bachelor courses you took, you were working with data or methods or papers that were written by the very instructors that were teaching your courses. Because we're a research university, most of our undergraduate courses, third and fourth year, are influenced by that research. But to a very great extent, our graduate courses are based on the active research of the field and of our internal groups and faculty. In the first semester, that might not have been visible to you because you were taking foundational courses, programming, principles and practice, fundamentals of data science, an advanced database course that may or may not have been much more advanced than what you took in your bachelor program. Maybe something on probability and statistics. You guys know what I'm talking about. This semester, that shifts. The first semester was there to blend all of you coming from different programs, different universities, in the country, outside the country, different backgrounds, interdisciplinary. It was necessary by design. But this term, you begin to take control. A couple more compulsory courses, you begin to take elective courses, but now here you choose your subject, you choose your domain of expertise. And I suggest that you should choose wisely. Don't choose something that will be boring. I taught a course some years ago on programming languages. I've taught it many times. and one of the students chose the language COBOL. Now, COBOL is a nice little language if you're interested in history. It was maybe the second or third high-level programming language. But if you are looking to use your time well and to use that project to inform you and maybe build your knowledge base and maybe contribute to your future profession or skills and so on, expertise, COBOL might not have been the best one. I don't think that COBOL will be making a resurgence anytime soon. So that might have been a poor choice. And much later, the student came to realize it was a horrible language in many respects. It was designed before people knew very much about high-level programming languages. And so the principles of programming languages were not embodied in that language. Okay. Many of these things are still true for us. We need to become aware of our likes and our dislikes personally and within the field. We need to understand what's trending and becoming more relevant and what's kind of finished and diminishing. There are techniques to doing this. We will learn how to become more aware, how to recognize those trends, and to take some decisions based on those trends and our own interests. Anyway, so therefore, what are our learning outcomes? You can read them, identify authoritative sources, conduct the literature search, prepare that bibliography of salient works. What do I mean? Important works in your field and recent contributions. Analyze that research. There's a way to read these research papers. I guarantee you that the faculty that serve as your advisors do not read every paper, but they're aware of the key journals and they know what's published each month in those journals. They're aware of the main conferences. They're submitting to those conferences and they read through at least the table of contents of the proceedings of those conferences. And they learn how to filter what's relevant and what's not. Because 70, 80% of what's out there is not that relevant, even in a journal or a conference devoted to your field. And another secret, most of what's published is not written very well. In fact, it's confusing or insufficient or wrong. So we need to become much stronger at the analytics and the critical review of the literature. And we will do this so that you might examine at a high level 100 papers. And you will, within a couple of moments, reject 3/4, maybe 80% of them. And of what's left, you will examine those by looking at the abstract, the introduction, the headings, the conclusion, and then decide, do you need to read all the sections? See, there are these techniques which you know, but we will put into practice so that we can become better at this filtering process. So we'll understand how to recognize and extract. We'll prepare the survey paper that represents the state of the art in your fields, respectively, and then we will prepare presentations. And we will calibrate those presentations for both technical and non-technical audiences. We need to understand the purpose of the presentations, what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I'll talk about this. I'll give you some exercises on how to do this. And along the way, we'll do even some writing exercises. Those of you that took me as an undergraduate, maybe in one of your courses for your bachelor program at NU, know there are certain things we do in the undergraduate version of a course like this. They're helpful. They will improve your writing level. We understand that most technical people are poor communicators, often not able to prepare and present well, but in particular, the writing is weak. And this is true regardless, worldwide. But we have that problem specifically with our students, and I'll tell you why. Some of you have heard me tell the story. Because we're biased. Because we come in this region from a tradition of intellectuals. And when intellectuals write, they write in elaborate and beautiful language. Think about how you write in Russian. Think about reading Tolstoy in Russian. That's not how we write in English in terms of technical writing. And the problem our students have is that they compose like Tolstoy, and then they translate it into English. And it's broken, in many respects broken. When we write in terms of technical writing, we need to learn to write more like Hemingway. And for an intellectual in this part of the world, that seems quite childlike. Many of you will remember having read something like The Old Man and the Sea, right? If you think about it, they were relatively short sentences, relatively direct, emphatic phrasing. It's a very difficult thing for our students to get around this. So we will learn, we will examine how to prepare this information, how to present this information, and we will begin writing our thesis. The grading, it's easy. You pass if you do the work. I don't know how else to say it. This is pass-fail. There's not a letter grade. It would be difficult to do the nuances of what is a B- and what's a B. It's not standard metrics because you're all going to be doing similar kinds of things, but in different subject areas. So there's no way for me to give you a quiz on your subject area. But if you come to class, if you turn in the work and you do it in good faith, life is good. No problems. We will have no problems. But if you never come to class, you don't turn in the work, and then in the last week of the semester, you're turning in a bunch of stuff, you're doomed. Many of you have heard me give this talk before, but I marvel at this because there are some students who never attend and then don't think that we will notice, and then they need to pass at the end, and by then it's too late. Plus, you won't have gained the benefit of going through these exercises, which we believe at one level or another are useful for you. Okay, let me jump on this. I said this would be short, and it's not as short as I thought. I will talk a little bit about the structure, but I'll leave it for our next class. I do have some milestones. I'll go through them with you now. We will go through these at a high level, but I reserve the right to adjust slightly the schedule, partly depending on our guest speakers when I bring in these other domain experts. So many of the things I spoke of, you see happening here, week by week by week. Selecting the sources, selecting the papers, choosing some of these papers, reading the papers, preparing the bibliography, writing the summaries, assimilating the information, preparing this as a survey paper. I will do some exercises in the middle on technical writing using the GRE type approach. Again, some of you have done this with me before. We find it to be quite effective. It's one of the few metrics where I can point and say, I guarantee those exercises will raise your level. And I can even predict by how much. We will prepare, present, and finish the semester. We won't lose anything from the loss of these 2 weeks because we will get it done. We will cover our material and we will achieve the learning outcomes. Okay, the rest you guys know. I will pause here and ask if there are any questions for me right now. Are there questions? I typically monitor the chat, guys. Just let me know. I think most of you understand this. Those of you who had me last term for the fundamentals of data science, we spoke of this transition of what would be happening here. So there should be few surprises. Okay, then let me move on. Again, if I finish early, we will end early. So we have our thesis. Let me talk about the survey paper task. Every semester I have this confusion because of the term survey. We all know taking surveys like on SurveyMonkey. And sometimes we conduct surveys as part of our research. But our survey paper is not about that. It's a survey of a discipline. And let's go to my third paragraph here. A survey paper is a service to the community. Someone, bright, knowledgeable, has taken the time to review all of the recent work in the field, in the journals, from the conferences. They've prepared a comprehensive bibliography. They have done all the filtering that I described. They got rid of the junk, and they have created a high quality bibliography of relevant and impactful documents. and then they summarized it. They analyzed, they assimilated, and they wrote it coherently, such that a reasonable person, by reading that paper, would understand where things are now. If you were Richard Feynman, the great physicist, and you wanted to come up to speed in some field of biology, which at one time he did, you would not begin with all of the specialized papers. You would begin with a really well-written survey paper. For any graduate program, for a master's degree or a PhD, the first thing you do for your project is the literature review, and it culminates in this survey paper. That's just the first major milestone. This concept is so important that there's an entire journal of the ACM devoted to this, and I'll show you some examples as we go forward. We're in no rush. We will do this together. We'll do the immersion. We will do it coherently so that we know what we're doing, when we're doing it, how we're doing it, why we're doing it, etc. It's one of the highest ranking journals within the ACM press. It's the ACM Computing Surveys. Now, of course, the survey paper that we write will be a very modest version compared to the 100-page versions or the 80-page versions published there. You can read it, the surveys, this ACM Computing Surveys publishes comprehensive, readable tutorials and survey papers that give guided tours through the literature and explain the topics to those who seek to learn the basics of areas outside their specialties. Now, don't be fooled by the word basics. What they mean are the fundamentals, the history, the core concepts, the data, the methodologies, the achievements, and the obstacles. Where are we now? By reading a good survey paper, it should position someone to then take knowledgeable decisions about what to do next, what the prospects are for that field. Okay, and then you'll notice selection, identification, search, preparation, drafting of the text, and so on. I'll come back to this. This is a document I prepared that we'll read later, but it's important for us to realize this is our major goal this semester. Immersion in the literature, reflection on that material, and then the qualitative assimilation of this into a survey paper document. Where does it go from there? Well, you pass this class. It helps you become knowledgeable in the early stages of mastery, but I want to make sure that you understand what we're doing. That paper will then find its way into your thesis. In the thesis defense, the thesis proposal course, which we'll be, I think, renaming thesis research, if it hasn't been renamed already, here's what that paper will look like. Your master's thesis will be a document in the range of 50 to 80 pages, a little more maybe, a little less maybe, but most of them seem to be coming in, depending on the subject, in this range. You might think, holy moly, that's a lot of text. It's actually not. We will write the first 15 pages of it this semester already, boom. And it'll be easy because you're going to build incrementally, section by section. So let's just look at this outline of the thesis document and let's consider what we will achieve. Well, the title and the author will have a working title, and you should know who the author is. So this is good. By the end of the semester, this is an achievement. I left off the advisor. We should have the advisor listed here. These will all be milestones. We will have keywords of what that document is about. If you read a journal paper or a conference paper, there's often at the beginning a section of keywords, right? It's helpful. So we will do a keyword exercise. I'll introduce the first one to you today. So check. Again, these aren't final drafts. Let's say they're first drafts, but we'll have the first draft of that first box. We'll have the first draft of that second box, the keywords. We will actually also generate an abstract, but let me return to that. Notice down here at the bottom, the bibliography. We will begin with the bibliography this term. You'll identify your topic, we'll identify the sources, you'll track some down, filter, filter, filter. Guys, you'll have 25 or 30 sources by the end of this semester. Easy peasy. You might think I'm kidding. We've done this before. It will be a relatively easy result. You're not going to do it just with random searches from Google. Anyone could do this. We will have qualitative filtering. The junk will be thrown away. The good stuff will be kept because we will do it with critical thinking using, I called it a discriminating approach, but discriminating as in we are choosy. So we'll generate a first pass at your bibliography. Based on that bibliography, let's come back. We'll be able to write this introduction. And basically, it's the literature review. What's going on in the field? And maybe you're doing something on image processing. You can say, the origins of image processing can be traced to the 1950s and the work of this team. And they used these data sets. This is a standard set of images which were analyzed. And in the beginning, they used a particular algorithm. But then in the next decade, it was determined that that algorithm was inefficient and had low success. So there was a new generation of algorithms. This team and that team generated this new approach. And through the 70s and then the 80s, they achieved these results. And then you have a table comparing the results. And then you say, but the next generation, they understood that in fact, we could take a different approach to the images. And they took this approach with these methods on that data, and they got these results. And then most recently, we have achieved the, like, it just happens by itself. So you're able to describe the eras, the methods, the achievements, and you're able to cite your sources. And you write this stuff a couple paragraphs at a time. And we do it iteratively, such that the first time you write it is not the last time you write it. I'm going to tell you something. Some of you guys are too smart. Why do I say this? It's a curse, because when you were in high school, secondary school, and when you took your bachelor's degree, things were easy for you. Maybe you didn't have to study very hard. Maybe you could write a paper the night before it was due, and it turned out to be one of the better papers in the class. That's not how it works here. So we have to be prepared for the fact that your thesis document will go through 10, 20 cycles of editing, and it begins now. So your bibliography, we will begin this term. Incrementally build, 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 build. By the time you turn in your thesis, your bibliography will be 60, 80 sources, 100. And you might think, that's not possible. It's simple. I'll show you the examples. You do it incrementally. You have a year and a half. So then we write the literature review. And each of those points I described, the origins of our field date to this team in the 1960s. They used these data sets, which have these characteristics. They got these results using this, showing that chart. Every one of those things gets a footnote to your bibliography. And so section, 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 writing, writing, writing. The work you do for me this semester by preparing the subject area, building the bibliography, writing the literature review, it all migrates into this document. So much so that we will not be migrating at all, because the actual document template that we're going to use for the thesis is what we will use for your survey paper. You'll just slightly restructure it over time. Even if you have to migrate information, the migration is simple as well, if the format happens to be updated. I hope this is clear. In addition, we will talk, for those of you doing certain fields, certain applications, especially the data science students, there's always a section on data sources. Data sources, data gathering, data pre-processing, and so on. So if we're doing something about, I don't know, the recognition of abnormalities in scans, medical scans, X-rays or MRIs, how do we get that data? How do we prepare the data? How do we consistently submit it? And so on. These all become little subsections in a section of your thesis document. So what are we talking about? We're going from this kind of high level, what are we trying to do in this course this semester, to the preparation of a survey paper for my purposes, to migrating that content, developing it such that it becomes the early drafts of your thesis document, which we will incrementally build and iterate over time. Again, if you choose well and you stay with your subject, life is good for you. You're way ahead of the game, and you could finish early, and your work might well end up in a conference setting. It's so feasible for our students because the people with whom you're working and the methods that you're using produce stuff that's ready for that kind of submission. And not everything gets accepted. Even our best researchers, when they submit, often get rejected with recommended changes. They make the changes, they resubmit. The process of peer review is an important part of this exercise. I encourage you to consider this later because you could position yourselves not in the historical end of things, but in where things are now, right? You'll be using the latest data, the latest techniques. Okay, so what else do I want to say? The last piece of today's discussion, now that I've explained to you what are my goals for the term and how I will approach it, I want to share with you a document, and I'm going to explain what I want you to do with it. This is a keyword identifier. I want you first to tell me, this document will be on Moodle for you in Word format. I want you to tell me your name and your major. You all have an advisor right now who approves your schedule, so indicate who that advisor is. But also indicate for me if you know who your potential thesis advisor might be. Most of you don't know, but some of you are already working with a faculty member. Some of you are already working as a research assistant. Some of you are already affiliated with one of our research labs. And you might know. You might know. If you do know, even if you haven't confirmed it with them, indicate who you think that might be, or if you know of someone who might be relevant for your work. Now, what I will do with this document when we're done, after you've listed in the left column here your keywords of interest and your anti-keywords, I will be able to use these documents to become something of a matchmaker for you in terms of connecting you to a group or connecting you to a faculty member. Now, what does it mean, keywords of interest? Well, maybe you're interested in machine learning. Maybe you're quite good at Python. Maybe you're interested in AI. Maybe you want to do a particular, there's certain things you want to do, right? You might be interested in bioinformatics, medical informatics, whatever this means. You might be interested in, these things matter. These terms matter. So any words that you think are interesting for you, put them in the left column. What's an anti-keyword? What's an anti-keyword? Well, things you don't want to do, things you know you don't want to do. You might say, I really don't like Java. I want nothing to do with Java. Java is my anti-keyword. You might decide you have no interest in machine learning or no interest in, I don't know, image processing and so on. You may know these things. This too is important because this concept of the keywords and the anti-keywords will help us. It will help us narrow down your subject area. It will help us shortlist the faculty member that might be of interest for you. And it will help us when we start to look for the authoritative sources. So again, some of you know the field in which you want to work, but the majority of people don't yet, or they might not know the subfield, or they might not be able to kind of characterize the sort of work they want to do. So if I were to load this document, and again, you'll all have this ability, you'll put in your name, your major. So maybe I'm doing this one. I should learn to spell my own name. And maybe we're going to say that I'm in data science. And maybe my current advisor happens to be, I don't know, the department chair. And maybe I'm interested in sensor networks. And I happen to know that Dr. Adnan is a big expert in sensor networks and the assimilation of the sensor networks and the related data in the concept of edge computing and threshold based escalation of data communication. So maybe I'm interested in Adnan being my advisor. And maybe because I just said some of these terms, maybe I'm interested in sensor networks. Maybe I'm interested in edge computing. Maybe I'm interested in medical applications of data science, and so on. And maybe my anti-keywords are, I'm not interested in, what are some things I'm not interested in? I don't know, how about C++? Maybe I'm not interested in database systems. I'm not interested in maybe in, I don't know, operating systems. I know that I don't want to do theoretical computer science. This kind of idea about tractability and algorithms and so on. So this may not be comprehensive, but I would like you to do just this. I would like you to prepare this document, and we still have 20 minutes left in class. I would like you to prepare this document today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment so that I can then briefly engage our Moodle course and expose to you the keyword raw file, the keyword exercise. So previously it was hidden. Now it should be visible to you. So the keyword exercise and the thesis outline, both of these are visible to you. And I now also have a submission box for the keyword exercise. Now, I have as the due date today at 5 o'clock, but I think that's not very realistic given the outages and so on. But I would like you to log into Moodle. I would like you to load that file, and I'd like you, if it's possible for you, to complete it and submit it. I will review these submissions prior to class on Thursday. I will, in just a moment, revise the due date so that it's Thursday before class time, because I would like us to take this first pass. You should now be familiar with the syllabus. You should understand what we're proposing to do, and you should recognize that that keyword exercise is our first attempt to begin to narrow down our fields of interest to establish our domains of expertise for our possible thesis topic areas. So please do check on Moodle. All three of those files should be visible to you now. And it should be the case that you can download that document in Word format, edit the document, and submit. While you're doing this, I will turn off the recording in just a moment. That is the recording of the session, and I will revise the due date on that submission box so you don't feel like you're turning it in late already if you don't get it in today by 5. Are there any questions for me about this first small task. Of course, it's not definitive, and you can certainly change your minds. This is our first draft, a notion of keywords and anti-keywords and potential advisor selection, because some of you know and know well. Some of you don't know at all. You have not really narrowed it down. It would be helpful for me to know how many of you have a good idea and how many don't. Also, it's important for me to read these documents because it will help me in the selection of the invitations to the domain experts, those who will come and meet with our class. Okay, so I'm monitoring the chat. I've had a couple of private messages, direct messages, which I will reply later. If you have any specific questions, yeah, Azamat is asking, can you submit it later because you'd like to rethink? Of course, whether it's today or tomorrow, ideally I see it by Thursday. So I will adjust the box. If you don't know about the advisor, just say that you don't know. But all of you should have a current advisor. It should be visible to you in the registrar system. Somebody has been assigned to you to approve your schedules. Could be Dr. Adnan, Dr. Tyler, it might be me, who knows. If you have a current advisor, someone who has the authority to approve your schedules, say so. It shows up when you log into the registrar site. It should show up there. But if you truly don't know at all, just say that on the form. It's okay by me. We will update these documents in the near future. This is our first draft. As I mentioned earlier, the iterations become quite important. Okay, I will pause the recording